Hey guys, welcome to a new segment on my YouTube channel. So today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different, and it's going to be the start of a new series of videos that I like to refer to as Was It Woke? So the idea behind this will be to take a particular film or TV show or whatever and basically run it through a set of criteria that I have come up with that will determine whether I believe it is woke or not. And the film that I'll be running through this criteria today is The Little Mermaid, the recent Disney live action adaptation release that has just come out in cinemas. There's obviously been a lot of talk about this film in the lead up to it and since its release regarding wokeness and certain woke tendencies that this film has seemed to inject into it. And so that's why I believe it is a very good choice to put through this criteria and see just exactly how woke is it. So after some careful consideration, some research into how to best structure this thing, I came up with 5 particular criteria that will determine whether a film is woke or not. So the 5 criteria I've come up with is 1. Racial diversity, 2. LGBTQ representation, 3. Toxic masculinity and feminist messaging, 4. Traditions bad, progressivism good, and 5. Anti-capitalism / pro-socialism. So within each of those 5 criteria, what I'll be doing is scoring each of them from 0 to 10, and then I will be taking the total of each of those 5 scores to tally them together, divide them by 5, and that will come up with the average score. Now, the average score will fall between a 0 to 10, and anything from 0 to 2.5 will be considered not woke, 2.6 to 5 will be considered a little woke, 5.1 to 7.5 will be considered pretty woke, and anything from 7.6 to 10 will be considered very woke. And at the end of the video, I will give this final score and I will present to you where it falls within any of those categories. And so without further ado, let's get started. So the first criteria, racial diversity, and as it pertains to The Little Mermaid. So this film had obviously a lot of choices that were made that leaned into racial diversity with this film. So starting off with the location of this film in the original animated classic takes place in Denmark, whereas now this one takes place in the Caribbean. And in the original animated one, there was a clear race of people that existed there, but now it's clear, you can see in the Caribbean there's a more diverse range of people that live there, and you can see that is a concerted effort by the filmmakers to diversify the cast. Then you obviously have Ariel, who has been race swapped to be played by the actress Halle Bailey. This is basically racial diversity 101. On top of her casting is also the casting of her sisters. Now this is one of the strangest diversity choices where they literally cast each sister as a different race, and it kind of begs some questions as to who King Trident had these daughters with, who were the mothers of all these daughters. Kind of promotes some negative messaging there, but yeah, just another aspect of racial diversity on display in this film. They even introduce a brand new character into this film who is not in the original, and that is Eric's adoptive mother, who is the queen of the island that they're on, and she is a black woman. And obviously Eric is white, so that was just another kind of aspect of a shoehorned diversity hire almost for this film. And there's even a shot at the end of this film as Ariel and Eric are sailing away where you see all the townspeople and all the mer people up at the surface. They're all there gathered to watch them leave, and it's just this massive wide range of diverse people of all backgrounds, all genders, whatever. And it doesn't make anything bad about that moment, but you can't really get a sense of where they are in the world. I know they say that they're in the Caribbean, but it does kind of make it confusing a bit to see like what's the race, is there a particular race here, or is it just some multicultural society that obviously didn't exist during the time that this film claims to exist in. So there's just some confusing choices there. And so considering all these things, I give the racial diversity for this film a high 9 out of 10. Second is LGBTQ representation. So I was actually quite surprised that this film did not actually include really any visible or obvious LGBTQ representation in it. So that was kind of a strange one, a bit surprising for me to see. So it didn't really introduce any new characters or didn't turn any pre-existing characters to gay. So yeah, that was kind of different to see. There is, however, a claim about this film, and not just this one, but the original animated classic, that it is somewhat of an allegory for transgenderism, with the idea of a mermaid becoming a human, basically. So, but we could debate about that all day long. I don't read any more into that with this film as with the original. So therefore I have to give this one a 1 out of 10 in terms of LGBTQ representation. So third is toxic masculinity / feminist messaging. So to start off, I would say with the two main characters, Eric and Ariel, Eric is a little less masculine compared to the animated version, and Ariel is a bit more stronger and independent compared to her animated version. So the man was brought down a little bit and the woman was brought up a little bit. And also pertaining to toxic masculinity is the changes that they made to the Kiss the Girl song. So they changed it to be, instead of not using his words and just going for the kiss, instead they say to use your words, you know, talk to her, make her feel good, whatever, and then to then go and get her permission basically before going for the kiss. So it's kind of like playing into that idea of toxic masculinity and Me Too culture and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's something that definitely happened there and was definitely a woke choice. And on top of that, it actually affected the film in a lot of ways because they played down the idea that Ariel needed to receive a kiss from Eric in order to save her. They kind of, and the way they did that was by removing her memory of her need to be kissed by Eric. So it kind of makes that scene a bit weird and awkward when they're singing a song about kissing the girl and she doesn't even know that she needs to be kissed, because kind of removes some of the tension from that scene. And there's also a few mentions throughout the film by Ariel where it's, instead of her really professing her love for Eric, particularly when she's talking to her dad, Trident, it's more like she's professing her love for humans in general and just their way of life. And so I guess the significance of this is that it's kind of playing down the idea that as a strong woman, she doesn't need no man. It's more like she's just in love with humans in general, and Eric just happens to be the first one she saw. Kind of ruins their love story a little bit in that way. So yeah, that's definitely a woke decision on their part. And the last point of this third piece of criteria is perhaps the most important one, which is the fact that at the end of the film, at the climax, it's not Eric who kills Ursula, it is Ariel who sails that ship and the point in kills Ursula. That's a big and massive change from the first one. It's obviously, you know, taking away this heroic masculine moment and instead giving it to the woman to save the day. So that is a clear decision there to kind of prop up Ariel as this strong, independent woman. And yeah, it's a shame that they changed that, because it was a very heroic moment from Eric to do that for Ariel after she had already saved him earlier in the film, in the original one. It's kind of like repaying the favor. It's a nice contrast there, but unfortunately they've taken that away in this version. And so with all that said, I would have to give the wokeness regarding the toxic masculinity and feminist messaging in this film a pretty high 8 out of 10. So the fourth criteria is traditions bad, progressivism good. So in terms of this one, there's not a lot here that's gone on in terms of wokeness, but I would say that particularly with Eric's character, Ariel in the original is already portrayed as being quite progressive and open-minded and to different things, but definitely with Eric's character, they took him and really made him basically the Ariel of land. Like, he's equally progressive, but in the other direction, you know, where he has this infatuation with the sea, the same as which she has this infatuation with land. And so they've really tried to make them both these very kind of progressive characters, and that's why they supposedly fall in love with one another. But other than that, I mean, there's not much else different compared to the original. The original already has kind of a progressive message in the film, but I do think this one takes it a step further. And for that, I think I'd give this one a fairly low 4 out of 10 for wokeness. And so the fifth and final point being anti-capitalism / pro-socialism. There's not very much here in this film regarding those things, but you could interpret some particular scenes to be leaning one way or the other. So as an example, there is some comments made in the film, particularly by King Trident, alluding to the humans sort of pillaging of the sea, and they're littering in the sea and ruining it with their ships and whatnot. So that kind of, I guess, could lean into the idea of sort of capitalism being bad, because obviously these ships are out sailing the seas to get fish, food, or to find jewels under the ocean, whatever it might be. And so they're hunters and all that sort of stuff. So there's kind of this idea that, you know, they're going beyond what they should be doing, and so it's kind of trying to paint the kind of capitalist structure as bad. But other than that, I don't really see much else regarding anti-capitalism or pro-socialism or whatever. So I would have to give this particular criteria a low 3 out of 10. So if you've been keeping track to this point, you would know that the scores have been 9, 1, 8, 4, and 3. which equals 25. And then if you take that 25 and divide it by the 5 criteria, that equals 5. So 5 is smack bang in the middle regarding my scale from 0 to 10. That would put it right between a little woke and pretty woke. Now, as the decider of this, I have to make a decision. Do I put it towards the little woke or pretty woke? And so the way I could basically break this down is if I had to give it either a 4.9 or a 5.1, I would be more inclined to give it a 5.1, just because I think it really should be regarded as pretty woke as opposed to a little woke. I think a little woke would be selling it short. So I think it is pretty woke based on some of the decisions they particularly made with racial diversity and race swapping and these sorts of things. So there you have it. The live action Little Mermaid, I would say, is pretty woke. Going into the film, I kind of expected it maybe to be even more sort of woke, but I was maybe a little bit surprised by them not quite going all the way with certain things, particularly with Eric's character and whatnot. But look, I think they definitely did hit the level of wokeness that I was expecting in other regards. So yeah, I think classing this as a soft, pretty woke is, I think, accurate for this film. So if that helps you, if you're intending to see the film or if you're intending to show it to your children, I think hopefully it's helpful to you to know maybe what to expect regarding these criteria. And I hope you at least found it interesting or fun to go through this exercise. Let me know your feedback in the comments section below. I definitely intend to use this criteria on other films in the future and maybe even on some old films from the past. And yeah, if you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.